All right, perfect. All right, this is Lance Grove here with Grove 1031, and this is we're following up on our speaker series. Today we have Sean Carpenter here. Sean is a bit of a legend in affordable housing space, but I'm going to give Sean the opportunity to kind of tell us about himself and give us a bit of his background. Sean, good to see you. Please give us a little bit about yourself.
Hey, yeah, sure. Good morning, Lance, and welcome to the podcast world. I guess I know this is exciting times, but um, look, I've been doing affordable housing for 28 years, developing in all over the place. We are now up to 20 states. I do a lot of consulting work with developers. I'm based here in Massachusetts. I do a lot of stuff in the West Coast, a lot of stuff here in the Northeast, and everywhere in between. A lot of our work is really just educating and advocating for affordable housing policies and programs that a lot of these municipalities and states don't realize they have the opportunity to utilize, along with developers who have been so kind of hell bent on using market rate strategies and just debt and equity, debt and equity, debt and equity. We show people that you can also have debt, equity, and equity, and debt, equity, equity, and a little bit more debt, and things like that, in order to provide decent, safe, and affordable housing for a lot of families and seniors that need it across the country. And I'll just say, just because it's timely, and I know we're recording, but I don't know when this will go live. But I mean, just yesterday, they finally reached an agreement in the Senate to for the Road to Housing Act. Now, this is a program that literally the two sides of the political spectrum came together and we can talk more about it in a little bit, but that came together to create a legislation that will enhance the amount of housing opportunities across the country. And the reason why I bring it up early is because it is the single most issue across every congressional district in the United States and all of our territories. Housing, shelter inflation, all that is so important that
Yeah.
people are just dying to find ways in which to help and also find ways to get there. And that's what we do. That's what Shamrock Development does, and that's why we have so many deals right on the pipeline right now, and looking forward to more.
Well, I want you to, when you're talking to me, I want you to bear in mind, I'm always going to approach things from, I'm pretty oblivious on certain topics, and I'm also even going to take it further, say slightly ignorant, because I have a lot of clients that, we do about 33 transactions a month. They're selling, they have to exchange into new properties, and we're very kind of removed from the transaction, but we're CC'd on everything, and I cannot tell you the comments and statements I see on these emails as it relates to affordable housing. A lot of people are very oblivious of it. So I'm going to be as ignorant as some of my clients, where a lot of them literally say to themselves when they see affordable housing and they're going into properties that this is additional paperwork they're having to deal with the government. It's this kind of they always kind of highlight it as this bureaucratic slowdown. How do you educate clients, developers, on affordable housing and the process of building with affordable housing, or acquiring buildings that have these affordable housing requirements?
Well, what I usually do is I put it right back on the client, and I say, okay, so what if it is? It's also you're trading, you know, maybe you're trading 15% equity dollars for 6% interest rates
Yeah.
on soft loans, or 1% interest rates, or things like that. There's a trade-off to the bureaucracy.
Yeah.
Also, as taxpayers, we want to make sure our government is actually doing the right thing and making sure that nobody is coming in and grabbing money that they're not entitled to. So they do a little bit more extra oversight. There's no question about that.
Yeah.
But the other piece of it is really just a lack of understanding. And that's where I can come in and kind of filter through and say, okay, well, this is what we need, and they're not really asking for anything more than what we would normally get, and we can usually filter through that. But let me give you something. I just heard somebody on Bloomberg this morning talking from the Fed saying that the average family income across the country is $87,000 a year, or the average individual income is like $87,000 a year. That's the median,
Yeah.
right? That translates to about $42 an hour. Now, for many areas like Boston, where I'm located, or in the San Francisco Bay Area, that number doubles. And in many areas around some of the big cities like Dallas and Chicago, those numbers double. So you're talking about people who are making under 40, under 60, under $80 an hour, who are qualifying for this type of housing because they know, you and I both know this, Lance, but they
Yeah.
know that they can't afford housing. And do we really want a society of renters, or do we want a society of people who have home? There's always going to be renters, right? There's always people who are going to be renters, but like,
Yeah.
do we want a society of renters, or do we want a society of owners and people who take ownership in communities? And so there's a balance between that I think a lot of these policyholders need to figure out. But the bureaucracy is real. I mean, there's no
Yeah.
question about it.
And this is people are all trying to do these numerical figures. They're trying to use these economic trends. And what about this? I've been of the mind that my drinks are psychotically expensive now. My clothes are extremely expensive now. I have this ridiculous interest on my mortgage when I travel. I don't even want to have a conversation about gas. I'm one of those drivers where I'll drive for a week and I'll just park my car and I'm done and I got to travel and I got to do stuff and I come back to my car and I go to get gas and I'm like, holy crap, that just jumped astronomically. So everybody uses these figures, and I'm just of the mind where I can feel it now around me. And I literally say to myself, anyone who's making under 100 grand, how are in earth are they surviving? Why aren't we seeing more affordable? I know you said this bill just passed, but I would expect there to be an extensive amount of affordable housing because the fact is everything is a lot more expensive. So why aren't we
Yeah.
seeing more of this in most places?
Well, we are and we aren't. So this bill that's going to pass through Congress is really, a lot of people won't realize the difference because it has a lot to do with um, keeping big corporations from buying housing and renting it. These build to rent programs through institutional investors. That's one piece of it. The other piece of it that a lot of people won't understand is raising the cap of which banks can invest in these programs,
Yeah.
these tax credit programs. And that will open up. And the reason they needed that is because a year ago, during the Reconciliation Act of 2025, they passed legislation that would expand the low income housing tax credit more than it's been since 1986. So there was an expansion, but if you're going to have a tax credit program, you're going to have people who can buy the
Yeah.
credits, and the banks buy the credits, but the banks are all at their caps. So lifting that cap and going up another 5% from 15% PWI cap to a 20% actually opens up the market to make those credits more valuable. And we have new market tax credits, historic credits, investment tax credits on the solar and sustainability side, low income housing tax credit, which is the most lucrative program. But then you go into the HUD basis, right, where a lot of the soft loans exist, the Community Development Block Grant and Home Investment Partnership Act, the home program. I mean, those programs are being cut. The White House's bill budget that was released this year actually
Yeah.
eliminates those programs. Now, that said, the president's budget, regardless of who's in 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue, is never passed. There's usually, a considerable amount of detail that the appropriations committees in each the House and the Senate will. But and actually, at the end of the day, last year when they eliminated those programs in Doge, Congress actually expanded those programs. So there's a little bit of give and take that's happening in Congress. On the local side, a lot of states are doing these investment bonds, essentially these bond bills in their legislatures to expand housing programs, affordable housing trust funds, and economic development grants and loans. And for a lot of, I'm gathering a lot of your investors are for-profit entities. They don't want grants; they want loans, and having those loans is still a loan on the balance sheet, but you're taking it at a low rate, maybe 1, 2, 3%, and it's not payable until you sell a property 15, 20 years from now. But so there is an expansion of programs, but there's always an attempt by folks to cut the programs as well. So it's a constant battle. But just go into some neighborhoods, right?
Yeah.
Just go into any neighborhood, pick a city anywhere in America, and there's a neighborhood, and somebody's staring at a building and saying, I remember when it looked so great, and now it looks like crap. And
That's a common
nobody
statement
wants
after COVID.
yeah, right. And it's like nobody wants to invest. Nobody wants to
Yeah.
do this. So, this is what we're really good at. We go in and we sit with the city. Now, I'm going to give you an interesting one, Lance. So, with my funny accent being up here in Boston,
And Boston.
you'd be amazed at how many of these folks would actually still talk to me in other parts of the country, even though I got that funny accent. But the reality is that what I'm providing to cities and towns across America and what I'm providing to developers is an opportunity for them to partner and come together and say, this is the vision that we have. We need a little bit from public. We need a little bit from private. We're going to mash those two together. We're going to get some banking dollars in here, maybe some federal funds, and boom, we're done.
Oh,
And that building is no longer, and it maybe serves as a community center. I mean, ideally it serves as like housing. That's my area, but maybe has some retail component to it. Maybe it's got a community center. Maybe it's a church. This is a big
yeah.
thing now. Is like churches redeveloping themselves into housing for their parishes.
Yeah.
That's a great opportunity. So
All right. Well, I always like to keep things simple. Okay. Whenever my clients struggle finding a replacement property, because when they're doing an exchange, one of the rules is that as soon as they close on the transaction they're selling, they have 45 days to find a new property, 180 days to acquire those. Now, if it's day 20, day 30, we have these automatic notifications that emails me, uh, obnoxiously, I should say, that this person has not identified. So what we will in turn do is we have to give them three options because we can't be seen as staring. So we're like, hey, here's three developers, syndicators, options that we know. Why don't you give them a call? You sold at 1 million, you need to purchase at 1 million. Call these three guys. Uh,
mm,
how? What am I saying when I throw an affordable housing option in there? Like, hey, this is good because or this is has a financial benefit because or what am I saying to my clients?
yeah, I mean the great thing for your clients. So there is a little bit of a dance that happens with the 1031 in the affordable housing space because
Tell me about the dance.
yeah,
I'm like, what?
um, one of the reasons is because unlike most investors who are investing in the long-term viability of the property, a lot of times private investors on the affordable side are only investing up into the construction closing of the deal. The capital dollars that they provide is the pre-development funds,
Hmm.
because once you close, if there's a low income housing tax credit investor, they end up between the construction loan and the tax credit equity investor, they're taking out and paying back all of those funds back as basis eligible. And the reason is for tax purposes, the tax credit investor um, is a 99.99% owner of the property
Yeah.
for tax purposes. Now, that said, I've done a number of 1031s where the somebody is, it's hard to do the ones that are like they have 20 days to go and you gotta,
Get
but
it
it's
in
not,
there on title.
yeah, like you again, you're going through this process of like entitlements and waiting for funding and whatnot. That said, there's always an opportunity with some of these 1031s who are falling in, they're falling behind, or they need to do something quickly where we can have them buy the property and stay in the property, through sponsor loans and things like
Yeah.
that, and they would still get a normal market rate return. It's not like people are taking a lesser return. Our pre-development lenders are getting 8-9% promotes, if you will. And their general rate of return for our investors, generally, this is general numbers. I can't give, obviously specifics, is generally in that, 12 to 18% category, depending on the market and depending on the risk. So, yeah. So, I mean, it's still the same. It's just a little bit more tricky in how to structure the deals. Particularly interesting is what's happening a lot more now, which is these office to residential conversions, which
Yeah.
are a pain in the what. But a lot of times you've got to get these office buildings quickly, so you do the purchase before the actual closing.
Yeah.
So the risk becomes much greater, but the 1031s sit very well in those categories.
Oh, okay. No, we have an army of clients that actually I'll see them go into these things, but then I'll ask them about the details, and they're always giving me blank answers. One big question is, what about can you guys do anything for a failed 1031? Because oftentimes the number one reason the 1031 exchange fails is because of that 45 days. So we're like, hey, you have this tax liability now. And then we'll often send them to things like cost segregation where they can mitigate their taxes. But I keep hearing you talk about these tax credits, these tax credits, these tax credits. Is that something that can apply to someone who already has tax liability and then when they
Sure.
come to your projects?
Yeah, they used to, when the tax credit program came out in 1986, and then the first deals were starting to happen in the 1990s, and I started working in this industry in 1998.
Yeah.
Uh, there was what they call public funds, where as long as they were sophisticated real estate investors, they had to be primarily real estate investors. They could invest money into a fund. Those would be called economic funds as opposed to the banks. The problem with that is that you're competing with banks, who are willing to take a yield of 4 or 5% to meet their Community Reinvestment Act needs. So you're competing for a very low yield. So if, like, for instance, if Bank of America is giving me 96 cents on the dollar because that's a CRA need that they have in New York, one of your clients is going to want to be at like 85 cents
Yeah.
on those credit dollars, and it's just there's a need to fill that gap. So there's that. The second piece of that is that a lot of the there's still some basis that comes back. There's still some depreciation that can
Yeah.
help folks offset those failed 1031s. But I always like to say to people who are like, okay, well, now we have the tax liability. Well, the only way to cure a good tax liability is just to make more money and pay it off.
All right. Well, I want to close this out, but the first thing I want you to tell me, who is your ideal client, your ideal audience that you're looking for in terms of your business?
My ideal client is a it doesn't exist, actually, so that just be clear on that. Like, my ideal
Shocking.
client is a big institutional REIT that already has a ton of cash, and they really want to get into the affordable housing space, and they're like, here's a block of cash, go take your pipeline and run it.
Yeah.
But they're generally their corporation and their corporate style is just never works out because they're constantly thinking about returns and metrics and things like that just don't match the
Yeah.
constant narrative of a market rate deal. So really, the client that I work with the most are generally families, small family office types or folks who are just small business that, hey, look, we own a small portfolio of real estate. We want to do a little bit more. We really care about this community that we live in.
Um,
Those are the folks that I really like working with because they have the ability to walk into city halls and to walk into state houses and state capitals in a way that I will never have that ability, but I can coach them and whatnot, and it always feels good. I mean, I think about Indiana as a great state where I would never really think about doing business in, and I've had some really great opportunities working with some local developers out there. Um, and same in California. I mean,
yeah.
all over California, working with local small families, development companies, and just regular people. We don't need to have big dollars. We can figure it out together. But as long as they're willing and committed, then those are the folks I like to work with. I don't really love the set it and forget it folks. They rely on AI to kind of to dictate their daily life and work, and they just
Yeah.
want everything automated for them and just like mail money. That's probably not our ideal client. People who are engaged and thoughtful, those are the folks I like to talk to.
Well, Sean, on mine, it's funny. I'm actually in California right now, which is I spent the majority of my adult life, and yeah, especially downtown San Diego. I used to live on 14th Street, and 17th and on used to look like, it was like tent city. And it was such coming from the East Coast to this climate, it threw me off so much to be around literally streets over in this affluent neighborhood and then see this devastation. So I think what you do is extremely important. I think what the work you do more so than ever with the right, everyone is so focused on the numbers. And I'm always like, why don't you just go outside and take a walk in different areas or really take stock of what's going on to you financially? I think there's been such growing pressure on the average citizen that these things are beyond a necessity at this point. But for me and my clients, this is extremely useful because, yeah, I was very honest. I'm very oblivious in this state. So anytime I have a client now, you're probably the first, not probably, you're the first person I'm going to think of with affordable
Yeah,
housing. I'd love to also send you an investment criteria from one of our family offices to take a look at it, see if you can meet some of those. And we're going to make sure we have your information. We're going to make sure we put up all your information and send it out to our clients. But thank you for taking the time, man. I really mean that. It's been really
yeah.
beneficial
This
talking to you.
this is great. Thanks, Lance. And yeah, it's good to see you again. And hopefully, we'll see you at another event. Where was it? We were in New York when we hung out the last time, right? So
Yeah, we were in New York at the CCC event.
that's right.
Yeah,
We'll
I'm
get
gonna
you up
be.
to the Boston one.
I would like, and whenever that is, please share that information with me. I would absolutely love to come.
I don't know. Boston's not going to be the same after the Scots took it over during this World Cup. I'll tell you, if you haven't done it, go on Instagram and see all the Scottish coming in here and taking over the city of Boston. It's absolutely awesome. The city will never be the same.
Tell all the Scots to do me a favor, go and finish Logan Airport because I used to always go there. I used to live in Connecticut and that
Yeah,
place was always under construction.
yeah,
But
it
either
still
way,
is.
Sean, thanks so much, brother, and we'll talk
All right.
soon.